Hello, how are you?
Very good. How are you?
Very good, very good. Okay, welcome today for our session, and it's great to have you guys in. I will just brief about Harsimran and Mohit. I think we know each other since some time now, and we've also worked on a couple of projects. And they are founders of Arc Lab, which they founded in 2011, and they believe in making sustainable architecture using modern tools. And something about Alcoy, we do aluminum premium fenestration system. So welcome you guys once again, and I also welcome the viewers who are joining in. So today's topic is to do with effect of COVID-19 on facade and fenestration industry. So guys, you want to kind of say something to start with, and then we can start with the question and answers.
I think COVID has impacted almost everything around us. So it'll be interesting to explore how it particularly impacted this particular industry, and I feel let's get into it. It's interesting.
Okay, great. So I'll just start with the first question. So the first question is that do you really think that COVID-19 has affected the facade and fenestration industry? Now that's the first question.
See, we honestly believe that we have noticed a lot of change while interacting with our clients since lockdown has opened up. A lot of change with respect to few key elements which were not there earlier. I mean, so elements like how well they are interacting with outside, how well they want to be connected with the greens, how much of open area now they are expecting in around their living spaces. Also how so COVID has taught us to sort of start maintaining our things ourselves. So a lot of people didn't have help during the lockdowns, and they've realized that the importance of cleaning stuff, the importance of keeping areas indoors clean. And I think those elements are now getting reflected in a lot of briefs we are receiving. So earlier we used to convince our clients to have more open areas. Let's bring in courtyards. Let's bring in let's bring the greens. Let's keep as much area soft as possible. And now I think we have since the last 2, 3, maybe 4 months, whatever briefs we have received, those things have come from the other side. And automatically, as soon as you change the shift in brief, fenestrations and facades become the most important element. As soon as they've demanded more openness, automatically the first thing will be how to do it.
The systems have changed, the fenestration systems have changed, the criteria have changed, and overall this has impacted the design language and how we are using glass as a major element of a project. So that is taking a lot of facade area, and that is becoming like a most important element for our building facade.
So this shift in expectations sort of bring in a lot of responsibility on the systems which are provided as solutions.
So basically, I mean, if I have to kind of sum it up, basically, I mean, human beings being social animals wanted to go out, and when COVID made them sit in, they wanted the outside to come in.
Yeah.
And the only way you can bring in the outside is through larger facades, probably. I mean, that's one way of doing it.
Yeah.
And people have started respecting the architecture around them, around their habitats more as against what they used to do earlier. And that is why they are coming back to architects to kind of, with changed needs. I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm sure this year, COVID has been something which has brought in a very significant shift in the architectural requirement of I would say inhabitants rather than only residents.
Absolutely.
So that's one that I can understand. And I think the second being that I do feel, I mean, if I talk about the commercial aspect, although it was all closed down for about 3 months and then small break, it opened up and then it again closed down. What we saw internally in our industry was that there was a lot of pent up demand that kind of suddenly shot up once the market opened up. So did that also happen with you guys? Why? Because I mean, I have always been interacting with a lot of architects. So one measure of knowing that whether the demand is coming up is not the projects which were already going on. Why? Because there the customer has already, started something, and sooner or later he has to complete the project. But once you see the new, projects coming on board, that's where you see that okay, now the demand is coming back. So did the same thing happen with you guys as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think what we experienced was that certain typologies of projects which were like institutional, they slowed down a little. So, for example, schools, colleges, they sort of slowed down a little, especially where probably the owners were private or maybe a trust or whatever. But in residential, the demand has definitely it went up post lockdown as soon as lockdown opened up. I think partially what we could gauge by interacting with our clients was that when people spend so much time indoors, the built habitat in which they are living. So at the same time, hello, hi Nitin.
Yeah, I can hear you. It was breaking for some time, but it's fine.
Okay. So yeah, so basically, what probably people who had planned, that in near future they might start up with a residence, or they might make a home sometime in future. So those, I think those projects, they probably their priorities changed and they decided to do it immediately. So a lot of such projects came up where a person had a plot from quite a while, but they were just not keen to start. But so we started conceptualizing on a lot of new projects, especially residential, as soon as things opened up.
Great. So also, I mean, how did you find the companies actually innovating to meet the post-COVID requirements, or probably, what was the innovation in their supply chain? I mean, did you find some changes in the companies that kind of supply materials at site? I mean, the building material companies, some change in them in terms of their supply chain or something, or thought process, something?
I think a lot started happening over video calls, over a lot of marketing started happening through Zoom meetings.
I think decisions have frame that was and show product to the client in a better way, in a quicker manner, and so that the selection process reduces. And I think the delivery of the product is also the time frame has reduced a lot.
Correct. I mean, that was kind of an eye opener for us. Why? Because most of the times our customers ask us for taking them to various sites for showing the residences and the registration work that we've done. And not only here, but even in Delhi, NCR, and other places where we work, people were very hesitant to kind of, showcase. And that's where we realized that now, I mean, that's the shift change that happened in our industry that, we wanted. Then we started off kind of building our own display centers. And I must tell the viewers that ArcLab is also, I mean, one of the firms who's doing our display centers in Chandigarh as well as Delhi. So yeah, that is what happened at our end, that wherein, now we want an independent place where the customer can walk in and see, rather than we kind of taking them to customer places. So that's what happened at our end. Sure. So I will now move on to more technical questions. What I wanted to ask you guys was that, do you think that the market is ready for thermal break systems and low E glasses? What are your views on that?
I think absolutely. We have seen a lot of. I think people are getting. See, it's all about how we make our clients more sensitive about issues, and how people are now more and more aware of what all is available around them. Low E, absolutely, it makes a lot of sense. The glasses. So there's a lot of technology which is already common in terms of, especially the glass use. So, for example, security glass. DGU, low E. So these, you can say it's become a common knowledge now. So people understand the value, but not necessarily they you might have to educate them about the particular use. and where to apply that product.
I think that
But
started because when we, as an architect, we started suggesting them to have like bigger openings, bigger windows, so that the green can be connected with the inside. So I think their first question
Right.
comes out to be whether that will affect our climate inside, whether
AC
we will
loads,
have to
yeah.
be more dependent on the ACs. So when they start asking these questions, so we need to have those solutions, and I think aluminium windows are helping in that. So then we will have to educate them. There are glasses that can be used where we need to reduce the thermal heat, and there are glasses where we can reduce the radiation. So all these things people are aware, but I think they are not completely understanding the core value or the importance of that product.
I think thermal break definitely is something which is very interesting in aluminum section, especially. So glass innovation is obviously there, but at the same time, when you can have that break in the basic section, because people, the common query is that if it's aluminum, it will get heated up, right? And if the section
Correct.
gets heated up, then obviously the heat will be, transferred inside. So I think it is definitely required, especially when we have such so the temperature varies from, let's say, in winters till 45, 46 in summers. So when we have that kind of range to deal with, we definitely need to have things like
Okay.
thermal
Why
breaks. I think they're very important.
did I ask you the question was that, I mean, when we go out to tell the customers that, okay, whether thermal or architects for that matter, so a few things kind of come up to us. Number one is this that, I mean, obviously, why do they need thermal break is because I would say, alternate material like UPVC or wood are actually insulators of heat,
Yeah.
and aluminum is considered as a conductor of heat. But obviously, when we talk about a cost aspect, then aluminum as against a non-thermal versus a thermal break becomes more expensive, right? So we wanted to, I mean, my reason for asking the question was that whether do you think the Indian market is ready for the price points of a higher thermal break system? That's one. And the second thing is that, of course, yes, what I gauge from your submission is that we need to educate the customers about the efficiency that they will achieve by using thermal break plus double glass, which should be easily understandable in the language that they understand. I mean, if I tell them that the U value would be X, they wouldn't know what's U value. I mean, they would want to know that how much of units of electricity probably they save, and if they are spending something extra, what is it that will be the payback time probably, and that's what the common man understands better than, just that technical lingo of U value, etc., etc. So,
Right.
but just as a question, do you think that Indian customer is ready for that higher price point, or the higher price point, if explained with the payback period, will be a better way of getting or convincing them to bring.
I think so. Basically, I definitely understand. See, we have been wherever we feel that customer. So when you present them with all the options, and when you tell them, okay, so the DGU will definitely be this expensive than a normal toughened, and this is the property it has, right? It'll not get heated up. You will definitely save on your AC loads. So it's somehow, if those calculations or that relationship can be brought down to a level where it can be easy figures to understand that this percentage of saving is there, and maybe it'll make a customer, it'll make it easy for them to take a quick call. But at the same time,
Correct.
I feel all these things definitely add value. So as designers, we understand the importance of all these elements. But as soon as you start comparing, but a customer understands that the reason they have decided to go for aluminum is because they understand its importance with respect to wood and UPVC. So when otherwise they would have had maybe chosen wood, or let's say even UPVC for that matter. So automatically aluminum gives them a certain, it automatically has shifted their, you can say, choice. But now it comes to what technical things it can offer, in terms of, and I'm sure they'll be willing to pay pay provided we explain them that this is the cost benefit which they'll gain.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So again, I'm going back to some questions related to COVID now. Now, you also think that customer is more aware of now having more hygienic architecture around them. I mean, to be very specific, that I mean, has the situation opened up a door of innovation towards having more hygienic buildings? I mean, what do you think about that? And how has it brought about a change in your architecture that you advise?
I think more than hygienic, somehow people are feeling that they need something which they can clean easily. They need something
Easy
which
maintenance is something
maintenance which reduces their maintenance, somehow makes it completely dust proof. Obviously, so hygiene automatically suddenly it has exponentially taken up a lot of our attention since during COVID times. But when people are staying at home, when they have to clean the surfaces or clean their areas where they are just now, I'm sure a lot of people must have realized that the gap they have underneath their doors somehow bring in a lot of dust, and that's what is catered in systems like aluminium
having more airtight solutions and easy to clean. That is the major disadvantage of wooden frames, because they need time to maintain. They have a lifespan. They need to be coated every time. There are air gaps. So people have started realizing that that's not a right way of living, because you need to spend a lot of time in just cleaning and maintaining a lot of corners. So I think we need to have innovations in that.
But I feel also it puts a lot of pressure on the brands and on the technical front, how to make the systems more simpler to maintain. How to sort of add things in the system. For example, a regular sliding system has rails. So cleaning those rails is obviously a person might feel that it's very difficult to do. So, whether we do it with caps or whether we do it with another alternate where there is no rail. So I think it obviously puts a lot of pressure on the development and design side of it. But at the same time, people will be more keen to go for solutions which are low on maintenance and which can give them the efficiency they need.
Definitely, yes. I think we are already working on these kind of solutions, which mostly architects are coming back to us with.
Right.
Maybe it relates to back covers or concealed V-poles. Why? Because open V-poles have plastic caps, which sometimes, in India we have mopping and they kind of, just get lost or let's say get removed, and the worms enter the kind of houses through it. So yeah, we're working on that as well, and I'm sure the other people in the industry are also doing it.
Right.
Now, coming to COVID again. You think that automation is a good solution when it comes to operations of Windows? Why? Because then it would be a touch-free operation that people would have. I mean, again, part of something which can add on to the hygienic aspect of building design. So, what do you think about automation? Just like we have it for curtains these days, which has become kind of a very common feature in all residences, or maybe buildings as well, for that matter. I mean, we have sandwich blinds in glasses for commercial establishments. So do you think that going forward, automation has a good scope?
I think a lot, but if we talk in terms of from the COVID perspective, I feel maybe in other typologies of projects, for example, in commercial areas, healthcare, and maybe institutional also, probably there it makes a lot of sense for touch-free solutions. You don't have to. Not everybody has to touch the door handle. So there, I think the hygiene levels and it can add a lot. But probably in a residence, I feel automation can serve applications like where a person can't reach. For example, double height windows, maybe skylights, areas where. So we often automate our blinds wherever we have a double height glazing. So it's suggested, it's recommended that manually it's very difficult to so we motorize our blinds and automate them only in certain areas. So see, people are sensitive, and I feel somehow they understand that okay, you don't want to automate everything around you, but wherever it adds adds value wherever it makes life easy. And let's say if you tell them that, okay, your skylight has a louvered system, it can, rotate automatically based on the sun angle. Or, it's so certain systems which add value and which a person probably physically will not be able to operate, will be accepted quite well in residential market. Because and as designers, people have been experimented with such spaces a lot of times. We have skylights in almost most of our residences we are designing, sometimes as courtyards, sometimes as light wells. So there are, I think, and it has immense scope of innovation. You can have, like you mentioned, blinds which are sandwiched in the glass. They could be automated with respect to what's happening outside. They could be automated, So I think there's immense scope of innovation there, which is possible. But at the same time, a residential buyer, I feel most of the buyers are very, very selective in terms of they're very logical and they're very thoughtful. So they'll probably pick those solutions which add value, and then they'll go for luxury. So if we start with the systems which add a lot of value in the space, probably that will be a good approach towards designing automated systems. And I think, for example, most of our houses, people are getting their gates automated, because they feel that it's very difficult to slide a gate which is 14 feet in length. It gets heavy. After a while, it's very difficult for a person to get down from the car. And so they feel that it adds value and it's not very expensive. So when that systems, it starts becoming more viable.
Nowadays, the facade sizes have also increased in case of residential projects as well. For example, your living room has a window of like 20 feet and somebody wants to open most of that area, and it will be very difficult for a person to slide the entire facade. So in these areas, people know the importance of that and they know that will help in using that space more effectively. So I think automations comes in a lot of spaces inside the house also. And in some cases, for example, your courtyard also have some kind of a slider mechanism that
which covers
partially your courtyard. And I think that is something that clients have asked us a lot. So whether we have a solution where we can cover the entire courtyard in glass in some weather. So I think we need solutions for that as well.
Okay, so let me just flip the argument around. One aspect of automation is probably, giving luxury, or let's say providing luxury of, not getting, to be specific, out of your bed in the morning and just with the press of a button, you open up a window for fresh air or whatever. So now what I have in my thought, or let's say as a company, is that we look at all features that we are designing also from the perspective of security and safety.
Right.
So what I mean to say is that an automation based security system wherein, if you are going out of the house in a rush and you don't have time to kind of check all the windows, whether they are closed or probably some of them are left open, then probably automation can be really helpful by, just checking over your phone. And if some window is open, with the press of a button, probably close them all and activate the security system.
Right.
So that's one feature we think that, probably, we often have this discussion in our office, in our design meetings, that, ultimately what is a window? Other than it is an interface between inside and outside, I think more so for an Indian customer, it is actually a security guard for them.
Right.
Why? Because these days there are no bills. And half of the house, is, the walls have been replaced by glass. So whatever customers that we come across, they are very, very paranoid about very huge spans of glasses. Okay. And, how would we manage in the night of, checking each and every door and window? They want master keys. And some of them just want them more fixed as against sliding.
Yeah.
Now, the only reason is why? Because, the I wouldn't call it luxury, but the pain of, checking everything and being paranoid or little, I would psychologically not very comfortable with so much of glazing around. So, and the only reason is why? Because one, obviously heat that comes in, for which the systems need to be enhanced. And the second is security. More than the luxury.
Right.
I understand when we do projects in Delhi and farmhouses, their luxury is the mainstay. But what we are looking at is for a common man, whether, the comfort rather than the luxury of automation of windows for closing them at the touch of a button, enabling the security alarm at the touch of a button, a little bit of luxury, if I have to kind of exaggerate the whole thing, that okay, there are windows, you're sitting in a living room, you want to switch on the AC, but at the same time you want to close the window. You don't want to get up from your seat, and you're just in a conversation, and you don't want to get up, and you just want to use that thing to kind of close or open the glazing. So from a security perspective, what do you think? I mean, let's not go into the luxury aspect at all. So from a security perspective, what do you think would be the customer's take on it, or architect's take on it?
I think it'll make them very comfortable. It'll so as soon as you propose something like this to them, see, the biggest fear people have is most of the families now they're making big houses, whereas the users are very few. So if let's say only 4 people are living in a house and it's a house which covers about maybe 5,000, 6,000 square feet of space, you will have a lot of windows, and checking them at night obviously is or while you're leaving is definitely I think it will make a lot of sense. People will accept it in terms of security. Yes, definitely. It will give them a lot of comfort that you can, with the press of a button, you can just check whether there's any window open or you have to shut it, or or you can just seal the whole place. I think it'll be a good, a very innovative, very accepted solution.
Okay, so let's move on to the next question. What is your general view of the key parameters on sustainable and efficient facades? I mean, is there anything that you would like to add on to whatsoever discussion we've had, which the customer should be actually be considerate about or should consider while kind of designing their facades with their architects?
See, again, I feel there are lots of parameters. See, basically, everything starts with the basic design, basic location, sun angle, what are the possibilities. But that's somewhat, you can say, a very early stage in design. So I'm sure the designer who's working on the project probably has taken care of the basic directions and cantilevers, etc. All those passive means, wherever there was scope. But in the kind of world we live in now, you have most of the people have houses in the row houses where they can't really control directions. So controlling sun angle is not it's not viable everywhere. It's not feasible in all the projects. So if let's say you only have western facade, you need windows there. So I think where it gets challenging and tricky from a technical point of view is to produce simulations, calculate sun angles better, propose to our clients, okay, in this window, let's have this kind of glass or maybe this kind of shading system. Let's reduce heat from here, and here you can probably have a bigger, simpler, just toughened wood work. So, such studies, such simulations, probably I think should become part of each project. So, it doesn't add too much in terms of the amount of work to be done on the project, because there are simulators which will quickly calculate the amount of heat gain and the radiation.
I think the facade systems, the glass, the kind of mechanism, the kind of system that need to be used in that particular facade, I think that is something that we need to educate them. They want to understand what are the options, so that every direction can have a different thought, so that every direction should get that comfortable environment should be provided. So I think we need to work on that more.
So maybe exactly. So like if a technical team is working on checking the whole facade system, after the drawings are received from the designer, if let's say there's a person who just sits and simulates the whole thing, the whole model, and checks whether these three are the critical windows, they are the maximum the maximum exposure to sun is there. So we need to propose a different technical solution to those windows. Otherwise, so if this part can become a stage in our process of design, probably I think it can suddenly add a lot of value to the overall project.
So basically, I mean, the key takeaway being that, obviously, basically to optimize the, I would say the heat gain or the light gain, you are recommending that the average customer should know the directions on which he should have the important glazings and in which he should avoid the glazings so as to avoid heat loss.
Not
And
no, I'm
yeah.
saying that the designer, so it's beyond the designer and the customer. Okay, so what the
Okay.
customer has given the brief, the designer has designed the windows. Now, so I'm saying, let's say it's they have used whatever they could, or whatever. Let's say they only
What
had,
they wanted.
yeah. So it's now the drawings are with you. Now the technical team you have. If let's say you in your scope of work try to simulate and suggest and make recommendations, not in terms of whether they should change the location of the window or something, but if they are planning to have a window there, then they should go in for this system because this system will work better. So it's a technical input coming from a technical team, because most of our houses we don't really have scope of not having a window on the front. We can't make dead walls if let's say the house is facing west. So we need to have light, but then there needs to be a lot of technical assistance in that window, where we can make it more efficient. So if that can be plugged, in terms of efficiency, maybe a better solution can be proposed to the client.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. But yeah, what we need to look at it is that whether it would also require the HVAC people or the energy consultants to be, clubbed in. Why? Because again, heat loss and gain also depends upon what kind of air conditioning levels that you want inside,
Yeah.
and what kind of other materials are there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, although the suggestion is good, but we need to figure it out. How do we get the whole team together
Yeah.
to kind of get the other values that are available? I mean, example,
Yeah.
some of the projects that we've been doing is there is a green building consultant already engaged.
Yeah.
Now they are very particular. I mean, about what kind of glass they want to use, and then they have that simulation software in which they kind of are able to determine what kind of heat loss, gain, etc., all those factors.
Right.
So, I mean, all this is a good suggestion, but I think the industry really needs to first get aware of, or being open to hiring a green building consultant, or let's say an energy consultant.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the mainstay of designing a sustainable architecture.
Right.
I mean, from our experience, we can recommend a product. From your experience, you can recommend a few products. But to get the whole thing together on the drawing board by way of simulation,
yeah.
Obviously a consultant who has access to all the, I would say, other materials and vendors that are involved,
right.
Will be required. But
Absolutely.
That's a good suggestion, and maybe there is a consortium coming forward. I mean, that can be formed, and these things can be taken care
Absolutely.
of.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's move on to the next question. What I wanted to actually know is that other than sustainability and efficiency of the facades, what do you think is the most key factor that you guys kind of think of that, okay, when it comes to sustainability, it may or may not be related to facade. This is what I definitely need to keep the first thing on my priority while designing a project. With the background or the context of sustainability primarily.
See, it sort of starts with the basic approach you have towards the project. I feel so. I didn't get it. You want to know holistically how a person.
Holistically, I mean, architecturally, holistically, nothing to do with facades.
Right.
I mean, what is it that, I mean, again, I'll be very frank. I mean, we come across a lot of projects which are designed as per the choice of the customer.
Right.
Now, the choice of the customer today is more aesthetic.
Right.
Right. Functionally, someone has to educate them. Why? Because they are not coming from a functional or a technical background.
Right.
Now, there is a third thing which I feel is the most important. Any function which is not sustainable, the whole world is sustainable. Anything which is not sustainable is not going to sustain for a longer period of time.
Absolutely.
So what is it in the architecture aspect of it? I mean, holistically, what is it? How are you promoting the sustainability factor with the customers? I mean, who are aesthetically driven,
See,
who are not functionally driven.
yeah.
And the third important aspect is sustainability. So how do you kind of go about sustainability at the end of the day?
See, for us, I mean, we have been so our general approach towards the project we feel needs to be very simple. I mean, so we approach it in a way that we feel so let's not complicate things. Let's keep it simple. Let's keep all the factors very so it's I think one is the overall approach towards a project. It gets reflected in everything, so it gets reflected in your initial design proposals where you're probably focusing on light, ventilation, directions, basic principles, and you somehow fuse your project, somehow plan your project in a way that you create spaces which can sort of impress the client, which can make a person imagine something great, in their own house. So pitching a interesting, practical, sustainable idea without any repercussions on aesthetics and design will not work. So it has to go hand in hand. So it starts with planning. Then obviously everything from your material selection, your you can say so everything plays an important role. So we guys try our best to keep our material palette as simple as possible. We like using materials which don't need too much of maintenance. So for example, we do a lot of brick houses. We really like brick. It's local, it's indigenous, it doesn't need anything, it can survive forever. So nothing, so you don't have to maintain it, you don't have to paint it. So it's general approach of the project, but it will not again be viable for all the clients. So from our perspective,
Okay.
we have to sort of bridge that gap. We have to keep educating, keep making simpler things interesting, so that a person feels, okay, I never thought of a brick facade, but this brick facade is looking interesting. So you add aesthetics in it, you add detailing in it, make it look fresh, make it look better, so that you can even a person who probably was feeling that, okay, this is not modern anymore, or this is not contemporary anymore, even to that person that idea feels brand new and fresh. So that's back up at the back end, we guys are imagining it to be, let's use brick because it's local. We can get better
Correct.
quality bricks here. We can get better masons here. But at the same time, you want to present it in a way that it's creative and it sort of,
Correct.
feels fresh and new to a client who wants to live, although they have been. So in this region, for example, brick buildings are very old. When Chandigarh started with exposed brick, exposed concrete, all the pure materials as it is, being used as it is. So somehow to make a person be convinced about having an exposed brick house, it takes a lot, but then you have to pitch it in a way that that okay, it's not that conventional house, it has these details and this is how it's going to look like. So from everything, I think even in terms of, let's say, windows, we have a lot of discussion on fenestrations, we have a lot of discussion on wood, what happens in maintaining a wood, what happens if you do PU on it, what happens if you oil it. So we have to sort of put a case in front of the customer, run it through and explain that, okay, this is how wood will impact and this is how UPVC will do. So, it's like we have to understand that, okay, from the client's perspective, they want a house which is easy to maintain and looks amazing. So for example, often clients come to us and tell us, okay, what stones to use. And our first option is that let's go for Indian stones. That's a gut feeling. Okay, let's explore something which we get here. We can, I'm sure, find something interesting. Those stones have been used from hundreds of years. I'm sure they work very well. And we've started using a lot of regional materials, regional stones. Our first preference would never be let's go for Italian or all those materials. But again, you have to do it in a way. You can't pitch an Indian Jaisalmer stone to every client. Okay, they have their aesthetic.
Yeah.
It's very bold. It has a very strong Indian character, Indian flavor. But at the same time, a person who has, see, house is very personal. It's
Right.
like we can't impose our ideas on somebody who's
On the
making.
customer. Yeah.
So you have to understand what the customer's liking preferences are, and then play with those and make a conscious call at every step. Even if you have to use Italian, you can try educating them. You can try to state cons of using that particular stone or pros of using the other stone. But end of the day, it's collective.
And I think the key points will be how we imagine spaces in a house, and what kind of materials we are using. They can be on the facade, they can be inside, they can be just the ceiling of your house. I think the materials and the kind of planning and the spacious spaces we are creating, I think that is helping us to create a sustainable project. And I think
So
facade
basically,
becomes, and I think
sorry, yeah.
facade and glass comes under the criteria of that material thing. And I think these couple of things helps us in creating that.
So basically, I mean, you're saying design of spaces and use of sustainable materials is what probably, sums it up all.
I think.
And you have good options of sustainable materials in probably fenestration or other building materials, I mean, available. Or you think there is more work to be done, or let's say more options? If they are, I mean, it will be a good thing.
I think that needs a lot of working. I feel fenestrations is something where traditionally wood has dominated from quite some time because of its versatility, and you can make anything out of it. It was soft, it was easy to fabricate. Now we have been, I mean, just so. For example, it's important to rethink everything. You can't just keep playing with the systems which are evident in the time. So we have, for example, completely removed wooden joinery from the doors inside the house. We have been from last 7-8 years doing stone chockers, for example, in the house. We feel it's easier, it's simpler, it's cleaner, and it's permanent. You don't need to maintain it ever. So and you don't need and no fear of termite or polish or anything. So and somehow it worked well for this area. And
But what we need is, see, wood is one side and aluminium is the other. So what is happening is we are asking our client to drop the idea of using wood and let's start using aluminium or UPVC. But what is happening is, for some people, accepting a very cold material like aluminium in front of wood is very difficult. And I think for us also, I don't think we are working on our every project we are working with aluminium. We have not used UPVC as such till now, but some of our projects still, keeping in mind all the negative pointers for wood, people ask us especially to let's go for wood as a joinery material. And the major reason is because they don't get the warmth from aluminium facades. For some, it is still like an office facade, or like a very cold material which is being used as an office partition. So I think this is the main criteria which I think is stopping aluminium to like take over the entire market.
So relating to the aesthetic, preferences of people.
And one more thing, like we are reducing the thickness of aluminium day by day. But I think one of our clients recently said, no, we want broader section. Because
basically they're coming from a classical background. So, I mean, they want classic look as in it should show. I mean, yeah.
They're okay with that gray tones, but they're saying, yeah, it's like just like a glass.
Correct.
So there's a gap in that. That does not give them the feeling of like a home. So I think.
Yeah, you're very right. You're very right in saying that. And I'll add on, what happens is that, again, why people prefer wood is that, again, I mean, people have been living in wooden houses with wooden windows for so long.
Yeah.
So there is something called as, a top of the mind, or for that matter, something that you're already comfortable with using.
Right.
And not many people are very comfortable to change their lifestyle or change some things around them. So that's one reason. Second reason, you're right that, I would say for a very long time, aluminium has only been used in government establishments and the engineering aspect was totally missing.
Right.
So most of the people relate with aluminium, or for that matter any other material than wood, as something which is more commercial, and they don't want to take it in houses.
Right.
And now when the market moves towards engineering, and with some brands having come in from even MNC brands, now there they are moving towards more of slim design systems, and Indian people are more happy with having more durable products, because मतलब वो दिखने में भी बड़ा it should be solid. I mean there are many customers who come to us कि जी हम तो 9 इंच की चौखाट लगाते थे और आपने तो उसको 2 इंच का कर दिया. So whether it is safe also or not, for that matter. So yeah, we did work upon it as well, and probably I think we are one of the companies to even offer customers classical systems as against slim as well. So we have both the ranges. So that the reason for designing it was this, that there were many customers, and even till today, I mean, when we pitch in our slim system, when they come to the display center and they see a classic product, they simply fall for it. Why? Because there they can relate to the kind of boldness of what they were using in wooden kind of windows. Right. So I can fully understand what you guys are saying. So I mean, I think we've already passed our time, but my last question, which is there for every architect, is what are your favorite materials for fenestration? And the tricky one is, which are your favorite brands, or which is your favorite brand? I mean, you don't have to prefer Alcoy, but generally, what are your preferred materials for fenestration, and which is your preferred brand, and why?
I think from last 4-5 years, our preferred material has been aluminium. We have been using, I think 80% of the houses we have done is done in aluminium. 20 would be wood. And that's where the client is very adamant, like, let's go for wood. Or we feel that for that kind of house would be a better option. So otherwise, aluminium has been our choice of material for fenestrations. Now, as far as the brands are concerned, frankly, we have worked with at least 3 to 4 different brands. Of,
I think more than that. I think
maybe more.
Time, there's a lot of companies are available in the city, and the cost comparison and getting quote from like 3 or 4 vendors, and then the negotiations and all. I think it's not like that we have worked with only one company or 2 companies. Sometimes what happens is a client brings us with an option of another brand, and we go there, we see their product, and we are okay, let's go with that, because price bracket also plays an important role. So I think with time, what happened is, like, I think 3-4 years back, we used to have like only 3 or 4 companies, and now we have like 10. So I don't think we.
But there's one point which I would be very, I'll definitely make here. Wherever we got a chance to choose the brand, we felt that let's choose a brand which gave us a better service. End of the day, if let's say we compare the product in general, we feel that everybody has something to offer. They have slight changes in their technical specifications, but broadly, if let's say we pitch, so the good brands, they have decent product. So as a product, they are probably very competitive. Now it comes down to the final service on site, or how the whole brand handles a project. And that's where we have not just us, even our partners in construction, the teams we collaborate in construction, sometimes clients also who have had past experience in using a brand or working with a brand. I think somehow it boils down to end of the day, either it's cost or it's service. So because very few people are getting into the specifics. Okay, this is using this section, or this section has this, so this is how this is better than the other. I think so. From that perspective, brands probably can lose their credibility also. Very quickly, one bad project, and the next project probably you will recommend somebody else, and that's how the competition is there in the market. Otherwise, often we have used Schuko a lot. We have used Aluke, Alcoy. We have definitely worked with. So and somehow we feel that these brands as a product has enough to offer. I think they're very competitive. They have good stuff to offer, but it's just that the final preference from our side would be how easy they make for the client, to sort of get
Correct.
things done, and how well they
Basically, basically you take the entire headache away from after having recommended the product to its execution, and that the company should be actually, or the brand should be taking care of more
Absolutely.
than probably only the supply of the product. I mean, that's a very good suggestion.
Absolutely.
And I think we are at the end of the session, and you guys have been very successfully able to, avoid my question of actually naming the one preferred brand that I was asking for, but that's fine. Any last words from your side?
No, I think it's a decent initiative. Great. I was looking at the Alcoy, the information, the type of information you're generally giving on the website, as informative, small pieces of information which can educate people.
Correct.
And it looks very interactive. It's sort of conveying a bigger message in a very small, easy to understand way. And I think we enjoyed fun.
All right. It was great to have you guys in.
Same.
And anyone who wants to put in a question, they can even contact us either on Instagram or any other. I mean, they can even contact ArcLab if they want for any architectural questions. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.